Welcome back to the deep dive. We are here to take, well, a really dense stack of source material, sift through all the noise, and basically hand you the precise nuggets of knowledge you need to get up to speed fast.
That's the goal. Cut through it all.
Exactly. It's late October 2025 right now, and if you've been paying any attention to where the money's flowing, especially around AI infrastructure, one name just keeps popping up everywhere: Oracle Corporation. ORCL.
Yeah, Oracle. It's funny, for years they were just solid, dependable database kings, right? Running the back office for pretty much everyone.
Totally. Predictable, powerful, sure, but maybe not, the most exciting growth story.
Not at all.
But now they're in the conversation with the hyperscalers, the big AI players. It's not just about IT utility anymore. They're positioning themselves as like a crucial kingmaker in this huge AI infrastructure gold rush.
A kingmaker, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
All right, so let's unpack this. Our mission today is a really comprehensive, balanced deep dive into this massive Oracle pivot. We're zooming in on the incredible financial signals that have totally shifted how the market sees them.
Mostly that explosive cloud demand, right?
Yeah.
The contracted stuff.
Exactly that. But we have to balance it, weigh it against the, frankly, monumental execution risks that come with such an aggressive, high-stakes strategy.
That's a classic high-reward, high-risk situation.
Right. So the core conflict we need to understand for you, the listener, is this tension. Commitment versus capacity. Oracle's locked in this unprecedented amount of future revenue with contracts. Huge numbers.
Off the charts, really.
But to actually deliver on those contracts, they have to commit an equally staggering amount of money up front. Capital expenditure,
Sure.
building stuff out. So the big question is, can this legacy IT giant, Oracle, actually pull off this complete metamorphosis? Can they become the world's next great AI infrastructure powerhouse?
And that tension, that's really the heart of the story, isn't it? The market's rewarding them now for this thing called RPO, remaining performance obligation.
Right, RPO. The value of future revenue they've already signed contracts for.
Exactly. And we're talking about a shockwave of demand that's already contracted. It gives them financial visibility that's genuinely unmatched by their peers. It's completely changed the narrative around their future.
Visibility is key there.
It is. But like you said, that visibility comes at a huge cost. We're watching a company commit to capital spending CapEx that's jumped over 200% year over year.
200%.
Just to build the data centers, get the GPUs, all the hardware needed to deliver on these contracts they've signed. It's a real high-wire act. The only way they avoid the pitfalls of that massive spending is, well, flawless, sustained execution.
So an incredibly exciting story, but also equally challenging to really analyze objectively.
Definitely. Let's get into it.
Okay, first things first. We have to start with the fundamentals, The business structure. Oracle still operates on that core idea. Addressing enterprise IT needs worldwide, that hasn't changed.
The mission's the same.
But the way they deliver, totally different now. They offer these flexible deployment models. You've still got the old familiar on-premise system.
Yeah, the legacy stuff.
But also cloud-based offerings, and critically, a hybrid model that mixes both.
That flexibility is key. We'll come back to that.
Okay, so based on their fiscal year 2025 filings that ended back in May 25, the business breaks down into three main operating segments. And the most crucial one now, the real engine driving this whole growth story, is the cloud and license business. C&L, let's call it.
C&L is the giant. It pulled in, 86% of Oracle's total revenue in FY 2025.
86%. Wow.
Yeah. And what's really important to grasp is that within that 86%, the focus is shifting fast. C&L itself is really split into two key parts: applications and infrastructure.
Okay, applications first. OCA. This bucket was 44% of their cloud services and license support revenues in FY25. This is the software layer, right?
Yeah.
The stuff businesses actually use daily to run things.
Exactly. And the star player here is Oracle Fusion Cloud ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning.
ERP, the backbone.
Totally. Oracle sees this as the foundational strategic core. Think of it like a company's central nervous system, manages finance, supply chain, HR, all that critical stuff.
Right.
When a customer adopts Fusion Cloud ERP, they're essentially replacing their core operational plumbing.
And it includes other things too, like HCM and EPM.
Right. Human capital management, HCM, and enterprise performance management, EPM. It's a whole suite.
And the strategic goal here, which I think sometimes gets missed, is how these modern Oracle apps are designed. They're meant to kind of blur the lines, right, between front office stuff like sales and back office like accounting.
Precisely. eliminate those old silos. And that really only works because they run on this unified cloud architecture using a common data model. Once a customer buys into that ERP foundation, adding more pieces becomes exponentially more valuable.
Okay, got it. That's applications. What about the second part of CNL?
That's infrastructure,
Yeah.
OCI. And this is currently the faster growing piece. It represented 56% of cloud services and license support revenues in FY 2025.
56%. So already bigger than applications within that cloud bucket.
Yep. And this is the heavy lifting part, the digital nuts and bolts. Compute power, storage, networking,
The pipes.
the pipes, exactly. And the critical database systems, the core Oracle database, MySQL, Java. And crucially, this is where the new high-margin AI infrastructure lives.
Ah, the AI angle. GPU clusters, big data centers for machine learning.
That's all OCI. And that's where that massive CapEx spending we talked about is being poured right now, building out OCI capacity.
Okay, so CNL is 86%. What about the other 14%? There are two smaller segments. They're not the growth drivers maybe, but they still matter.
Oh, absolutely. They're still essential parts of the whole machine. You've got the services business. That's about 9% of total FY 2025 revenue.
Services, like consulting.
Mainly, yeah.
Mm.
Consulting services, advanced customer support. It's the people side. The experts who help customers actually get the most out of the products manage that tricky migration from on-premise to cloud. You can't just flip a switch.
Right, you need help implementing and optimizing it all. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And last one, hardware. Tiny, just 5% of revenue.
Tiny, but still critical. Hardware includes things like Oracle engineered systems, particularly Exadata.
Exadata, I've heard of that. Optimized for Oracle databases, right?
Exactly, designed to run their database better than anything else. Now, Oracle expects margins here to be lower than CNL. They don't want to grow by selling physical boxes anymore. But this high-performance hardware serves two roles. It's still sold to legacy on-prem customers, sure, but it also often forms the specialized foundation of Oracle Cloud infrastructure itself. So it supports the flagship product, the database, which in turn feeds the cloud strategy. It's all connected.
Okay, so looking at the overall strategy then, Oracle's pretty clear, aren't they? They think they're just starting this big migration.
Yeah, their filings use phrases like early stages of a material migration. They want to move their huge existing customer base from those old on-prem products onto the Oracle Cloud. That's the whole game plan. Their growth story really hangs on making that transition happen successfully.
And you mentioned flexibility earlier. Why is offering on-prem, cloud, and hybrid so important for this migration? Seems counterintuitive, maybe.
It's all about the competition and who their core customers are. Think about AWS or Azure. They often want you all in on their stack, deeply locked in. Oracle's taking a different tack. They're positioning themselves as flexible, supporting interoperable models. For a giant bank or a government agency or a big manufacturer in a regulated industry, that flexibility isn't just nice to have, it's often essential.
Because they can't or won't bet everything on one vendor.
Exactly. They have complex needs, existing investments. Oracle's willingness to meet them where they are supporting multi-cloud setups, hybrid environments, addresses those needs, especially for those huge regulated companies that are usually slow to move but represent the biggest, stickiest contracts. That flexibility is actually fundamental to accelerating their growth.
Okay, so this is where we pivot. From Oracle the stable giant to Oracle the potential hyper-growth AI player, this is where it gets really interesting based on the data that came out after their fiscal 2025 ended.
Yeah, the perception shift was fast. Almost overnight, they went from, legacy tech to being central in the AI infrastructure discussion.
Let's just baseline the numbers first. Over the 5 years before all this, Oracle's revenue grew at, an 8% compound annual growth rate? CAGR. Respectable, steady.
Solid, but not setting the world on fire.
Right, but the recent data, it shows acceleration that's anything but stable.
Exactly. Take the latest quarter, we have data for Q1 of fiscal 26. Total cloud services revenue jumped 28% year over year, landed at $7.2 billion.
28%. That's already a huge step up from 8% overall growth.
Massive step up.
And the real excitement seems focused on that infrastructure division, OCI. You said that's where the AI stuff lives.
That's right. And OCI revenue specifically, it soared 55% year over year growth, hit $3.3 billion just in that one quarter, Q1 FY26.
55% growth. For infrastructure in a company this size, that feels like they're not just playing along, they're actually capturing huge chunks of new demand, especially that high-performance compute needed for AI models.
That 55% OCI surge is what really lends weight to the whole AI story. But the thing that truly sent the stock flying and changed the whole financial conversation, That was the RPO, remaining performance obligation.
RPO again. You mentioned it, but yeah, we need to really define this and get our heads around the scale.
Okay, so RPO is the total dollar value of all the future revenue that's already locked in. Signed contracts, multi-year deals, non-cancelable. It's basically a guaranteed sales backlog.
So not what they hope to sell, but what customers have already legally agreed to pay them over the coming years.
Precisely. It gives investors incredible visibility.
And for Oracle, this number didn't just inch up. Well, you used the word exploded. Analysts called it a shockwave.
It was a shockwave. Just to give it context,
Yeah.
the RPO figure reportedly exploded by a whopping 359%.
Whoa.
And analysts are now talking about the total RPO being well beyond the $800 billion mark. Just think about that number for a second. $800 billion in future revenue, mostly tied to cloud subscriptions, including that high-demand AI compute time, guaranteed.
That's staggering. To help visualize, analysts are saying this backlog is so big, it's basically enough to cover all the revenue Oracle's forecasting for the next 5 years combined.
Yeah, that gives them a level of revenue visibility that is, and this is the key phrase, unmatched by peers. Because their whole model now is about shifting those legacy customers onto these huge multi-year cloud deals.
And that changes the risk profile entirely, doesn't it?
Completely. When you have $800 billion basically in the bank, contractually speaking, it acts as this enormous buffer against economic slowdowns or competitive hits, at least in the medium term. It's like a giant utility company locking in its next 5 years of electricity sales up front.
Okay. And it's this unprecedented visibility that lets Oracle make these incredibly bold forward projections. They're forecasting total revenue to hit $225 billion by the end of fiscal 2030.
That number is just,
Wow.
if they hit $225 billion in 5 years, that implies a 32% compound annual growth rate over that time.
32% CAGR. That's like 4 times faster than the 8% they managed before.
Exactly. That 32% figure, that's the number the market is now betting on them achieving. And alongside that, they're forecasting non-GAAP earnings per share, EPS, to grow at a 28% CAGR. They think it could hit 21% CAC share by 2030.
$21 EPS. Okay.
But let's just pause and be, analytical here. A 32% growth rate sustained for 5 years for a company already as massive as Oracle. Very few companies, even the hyperscalers, have ever achieved that, let alone sustained it.
Right. It requires more than just signing deals. It's flawless execution in a brutal market.
Absolutely.
So the broader message the market got from this RPO explosion was basically confirmation. The big AI boom is real. It's happening faster and bigger than maybe people thought.
Exactly right. This RPO surge validated the most bullish predictions out there. Figures like NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang talking about trillions in global spending needed for AI infrastructure. The demand is clearly so huge, it's swamping even the existing capacity of the big cloud players.
And that's the opening for Oracle, with their massive customer base looking for another option.
That seems to be the dynamic. They're suddenly a kingmaker because the demand pie is growing faster than anyone can bake it right now.
And the market reaction wasn't just Oracle, right? It lifted other boats.
Correct. It sent positive ripples across the whole AI supply chain. Companies building the stuff needed for this rapid data center expansion, think Broadcom for specialized chips, ARM for processor designs, Verlutive for cooling and power systems, they all got a boost.
Because it signaled this isn't a blip, it's a multi-year structural build-out.
Precisely. The market now sees this as like the foundational phase of a new tech era, similar to the internet build-out back in the day. Big structural long-term investment.
Okay, that $800 billion RPO is the clear anchor for the bulls. Now let's really dig into the strengths Oracle has. What validates the possibility of them hitting that 32% growth through 2030?
Right. What supports the forecast?
First, let's just hammer home the nature of that contracted revenue and the visibility. Like you said, this isn't speculative hope. The bulk of this future growth is effectively secured by those multi-year, non-cancelable cloud deals.
And that's such a critical difference from past tech bubbles, isn't it? Back then, companies got valued on, hoped for user growth or maybe market share someday.
Right, on potential.
Oracle's valuation now, it's anchored by legally binding contracts for future revenue. It's the difference between valuing hope and valuing a contractual obligation to pay. That visibility massively de-risks their medium-term income stream.
And it must give them confidence to make those huge CapEx bets.
Absolutely. When you're planning to spend $21 billion a year on building stuff, knowing that the revenue to pay for it is already contracted for the next 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
that changes everything. It impacts your borrowing power, your financial planning. That RPO certainty lets them, theoretically, outspend rivals to build capacity because they know the customers are already lined up.
Okay, strength number 2, their cloud strategy differentiation. Especially this unusual approach to multi-cloud and sovereignty. This seems like a real departure from how Amazon and Microsoft operate.
It really is. The multi-cloud thing is almost counterintuitive. Instead of locking customers in, Oracle's saying, hey, we can help you run workloads across different providers, even our competitors.
Which sounds crazy, but who does that appeal to?
It appeals massively to those big global 2,000 companies, the ones with complex existing systems, regulatory burdens, and explicit policies against vendor lock-in. For them, Oracle's approach removes a huge barrier to adopting cloud. It speaks directly to their risk aversion.
And the sovereignty focus, also aimed at those big, regulated players.
Vitally important for them. OCI has specific offerings designed to meet strict rules about data location and access. Things like OCI Sovereign Cloud ensure a country's data stays within its legal borders, totally separate from global operations if needed.
And they're extending that to AI now, too, sovereign AI.
Yes, and that's critical. It means, say, a government agency or a big bank can use the latest AI tools, but have total assurance that the data used to train the models, and the models themselves, never leave their national or regulatory control. That's a powerful competitive moat for winning high-value public sector and regulated industry deals globally. Not everyone can offer that credibly.
Okay, third strength, product integration and foundation. Their existing dominance in enterprise software is a massive launchpad for this cloud shift.
You bet. That Oracle Fusion Cloud ERP suite we talked about, that's the core. Once a customer adopts that foundational platform, they're using a single common data model across their whole business.
Which makes adding other Oracle Cloud apps much easier.
Not just easier, but almost overwhelmingly logical. Adding Oracle's EPM for planning or HCM for HR becomes way more valuable because it plugs right into that unified data environment. You get more insight than you would from patching together different vendor systems. It creates this reinforcing ecosystem. Stickiness.
And that suite isn't just sitting still, right? The sources mentioned they're constantly adding new tech.
Right. They're not just waiting for customers to figure out AI. They're baking capabilities, AI, IoT, machine learning, even digital assistants directly into those core cloud applications that businesses rely on.
So they make money from AI in two ways: renting the raw compute power in OCI,
and by selling productivity boosts within the essential software clients already use. It's a smart dual approach to monetizing AI.
Okay. Finally, let's touch on the historical financials that built this foundation before the RPO boom. The underlying company was healthy, right?
Yeah, the base was solid. Net income grew nicely from about $10.5 billion in FY24 to over $12.4 billion in FY25.
And revenues were up 8% in FY25 to nearly $57.4 billion. Healthy growth, even before the big surge.
And that steady growth reflects that successful business model shift we discussed earlier, moving away from big one-time license fees to predictable, recurring subscription revenue. That's a game changer for financial stability.
Provides the steady cash flow needed for those big investments.
Exactly. Look at their operating cash flow. Net cash from operations was a really strong $20.8 billion in FY 2025. You need that kind of cash generation to fuel a multi-billion-dollar annual build-out.
And the market recognized this shift even before the huge RPO numbers, didn't it? The stock performance was strong.
It was. Their 5-year total return ending May 2025 was way ahead of the market, around 331% compared to maybe 210% for the S&P 500 and 272% for the tech index. So the market had already started placing its bet that this transformation was real even before the $800 billion RPO confirmed it. Okay, but that $800 billion RPO, as compelling as it is, we absolutely had to take a really critical look at the flip side. The sheer challenge ahead. This is a massive bet. If they don't execute perfectly, the downside could be pretty severe.
Right, the balancing act.
So the big question becomes, what are the real tangible threats? The risks detailed in their own regulatory filings, the 10K. What could actually stop them from hitting that explosive 32% growth target through 2030?
Number one has to be the sheer size of the investment needed, right? The massive capital investment and execution risk. Fulfilling those contracts means spending huge amounts continuously on data centers everywhere.
The scale is just mind-boggling. Look at the CapEx number again, $21.2 billion in fiscal 2025. That's up 209% from the year before.
A 209% increase in spending in 1 year.
Yeah, it means they're basically running this enormous simultaneous construction project across dozens, maybe hundreds of sites around the world. They have to pour all that concrete, buy all that steel, install all that advanced hardware before those steady cloud subscription payments really start rolling in at scale.
That's the core conflict right there. The $800 billion promise requires a $21 billion a year down payment. If they stumble on the build-out, the whole story unravels.
It really does. And it puts them on this incredibly tricky tightrope. Two big risks here. Risk one, they overestimate demand. Maybe the AI boom cools off a bit, or competitors manage to poach some contracts. If that happens, Oracle's stuck with long-term leases on data center space they don't need. That kills profitability, or they face huge penalties to get out of the leases.
Okay, overspending risk. What's risk two?
Underspending, or maybe just building too slowly. If they underestimate demand or can't build fast enough, they face critical shortages. They literally can't provide the compute power promised in those $800 billion worth of contracts.
So they lose business.
They lose lucrative business, customers get angry, and their reputation as a reliable provider takes a massive hit. Either way, overshooting or undershooting on CapEx, it's bad.
And they're relying on others to build a lot of this, right? Third-party data centers?
Heavily reliant. Adds another layer of complexity, requires flawless logistics and partner management. It's not all under their direct control.
Okay, risk number two. Competition and pricing pressure. They're not doing this in a vacuum. They're up against the biggest tech companies in the world.
Yeah, the competition is absolutely brutal, and it's always changing. You've got Adobe in applications, but in infrastructure and cloud. It's Google, Alphabet, Amazon, AWS, Microsoft, Azure, plus Salesforce in apps, SAP in ERP. It's a murderer's row.
And they're all investing billions in AI, too.
Everyone is. So the constant risk is downward pressure on prices. The big players, especially AWS and Azure, can afford to offer really deep discounts to win deals. Or they might roll out new features faster, making Oracle's offerings look less valuable.
Which forces Oracle's hand.
Potentially, yeah. They might have to lower their prices to compete or accept less favorable contract terms. That directly hits revenue, and more importantly, it squeezes those operating margins that the market is counting on them maintaining or improving. As the cloud market gets more mature, especially for basic compute power, price wars are almost inevitable.
Let's drill down on the AI risks specifically. That's their core growth story now. There must be AI-specific legal and technological risks.
Absolutely. It's such a fast-moving field.
Yeah.
Oracle's invested a ton in generative AI, embedding it in OCI in their applications.
Yeah.
But what if those AI products just don't perform as well as expected? Or what if they lag behind the innovations coming out of, say, Google or Microsoft and OpenAI?
Speed matters hugely here.
It's everything. If Oracle falls behind technologically, their reputation gets damaged, and future revenue tied to AI could evaporate quickly. Customers will go where the best tech is.
And it's not just the tech itself, right? There are legal and ethical minefields with AI.
Big time. Issues like algorithmic bias, lack of transparency in how AI makes decisions, unexpected or harmful AI behavior. These expose Oracle and their customers using the AI to lawsuits and serious reputational damage.
Plus the whole copyright issue, using data to train models.
That's another huge one. Using copyrighted material without permission. And the regulatory landscape is still, frankly, a mess. Different rules in different places, no clear federal guidelines in the U.S. It makes compliance incredibly complex and expensive.
And Oracle themselves warn about the R&D costs, don't they?
They do. They explicitly state in their filings that developing these new products is expensive and risky. And they warn that significant revenues from their current R&D efforts, all the money they're spending on AI today, might not actually show up for several years, if at all.
So high R&D spending is essential to stay competitive, but it's a cost now with no guarantee of a payoff later.
Exactly. It's a necessary but uncertain investment.
Okay, next risk. Supply chain and operational complexity. This ties back to the CapEx spending.
Yeah, this is a major potential bottleneck. Oracle doesn't build its own chips or server racks or cooling systems. They depend entirely on third-party suppliers for all the hardware that goes into their data centers and their engineered systems.
And sometimes they only have one supplier for a specific part.
Often, yeah. They mention reliance on sole sources for certain critical hardware components. That creates obvious fragility in the supply chain. If that one supplier has a problem, Oracle has a big problem.
And the source data specifically mentioned a current industry-wide shortage.
Yes, a really acute one. The supply capacity for AI accelerators, basically high-end GPUs from companies like NVIDIA, is incredibly tight. Demand is just through the roof.
So everyone's scrambling for the same chips.
Everyone. And that forces Oracle and all its competitors to accept less favorable terms with suppliers, meaning they have to pay more for these critical components. That directly increases the cost of building out their AI capacity and eats into margins.
And there's a risk the chips become obsolete quickly, too.
Huge risk. This hardware is cutting edge, which also means it gets superseded fast. Today's top-of-the-line AI chip might be old news in 18 months. So they face this constant expensive cycle of needing to upgrade just to stay competitive. Building an $800 billion backlog on components that are expensive, hard to get, and quickly outdated. It's a challenge.
Okay, finally, let's look at the pure financial and debt concerns. Even with strong cash flow, there are some potential hurdles on the balance sheet.
Well, the big one is just the sheer amount of debt. As of May 2025, they had $92.6 billion in outstanding debt.
Almost $100 billion.
Yeah. Now, large companies always carry debt, but funding that aggressive $21 billion annual capex while also servicing nearly $100 billion in existing debt, that's a very delicate financial balancing act, especially if interest rates stay high.
And the interest payments themselves are significant.
They are. Interest expense climbed to almost $3.6 billion in FY 2025. Now, they did successfully issue another $14 billion in bonds that year to manage things. But still, that debt costs money every single quarter.
And their business has natural ups and downs during the year, too. Quarterly volatility.
Right. Typical for enterprise software. Their revenue and margins tend to be highest in the fourth fiscal quarter, lowest in the first. Partly due to sales team incentives and how big deals close. This just makes it harder to judge their progress based on any single quarter.
And the shift to cloud subscriptions also creates some short-term noise in the numbers.
Yeah, that's the revenue recognition volatility. When a customer stops buying a big upfront license where Oracle books all the revenue immediately and shifts to a cloud subscription where the revenue gets spread out ratably over years, it actually makes their short-term reported revenue look lower, even though the long-term contracted value, the RPO, is going up.
So the underlying business might be getting stronger, but the headline numbers can look bumpy quarter to quarter during the transition.
Exactly. It can cause short-term anxiety in the market if people don't look deeper at the RPO.
And lastly, you mentioned a specific legal headwind in Europe.
Yeah, the Netherlands Privacy Class Action, TPC. It's a lawsuit alleging GDPR violations related to how Oracle collected and used data. The key thing is, after it was initially dismissed, an appeals court overturned that decision back in mid-2024. So the case is now moving forward on its merits.
And the potential damages are big.
The claim is substantial, yeah. They're seeking €500 per Dutch internet user for immaterial damages, plus costs. While Oracle is appealing to the Dutch Supreme Court, just fighting a case like this, regardless of the ultimate outcome, is expensive, it's disruptive, and it pulls management focus away from running the actual business and executing that crucial cloud strategy. It's a significant distraction at minimum. Hashtag tech conclusion and final thoughts.
Okay, let's try and bring this all together. We've covered a lot of ground. This deep dive really highlights the central conflict, doesn't it? It's defined by these two massive opposing forces.
Absolutely.
On one side, you have this unprecedented contracted demand for AI infrastructure locked in by that RPO figure that's well beyond $800 billion, that's driving this incredible stock narrative comparing Oracle to the early days of the internet boom.
For bullish case, loud and clear.
But on the other side, that whole growth story is weighed down by the immediate heavy reality of execution risk. Massive capex needed now $21.2 billion last year alone, and this huge challenge of getting their hands on enough cutting-edge AI hardware in a market that's super competitive and supply-constrained.
The bear case, or maybe just the realist case.
So what's the synthesis? What does it all boil down to?
Well, the migration of Oracle's huge customer base to the cloud. That's definitely real. The 55% growth we saw in OCI confirms the strategy is working. They are winning deals. They clearly have the contracts. They have the customer relationships.
No doubt.
But sustaining that implied 32% revenue growth all the way to 2030. That requires near-perfect execution,
Right.
especially on those two big bottlenecks we identified. Managing that enormous CapEx spend without wasting money or falling behind schedule.
And winning the supply chain battle. Getting enough GPUs basically at prices that don't kill their margins.
Exactly. The risk here isn't really about demand anymore. The RPO proves the demand is absolutely there. The risk is operational, its complexity, its financial discipline. Can they actually build the profitable cloud capacity needed to fulfill those paper promises?
Okay. And the market, it seems to be pricing in success already. You mentioned the 21 NPS target for 2030.
Yeah, the market is definitely rewarding Oracle now based heavily on that 21 EPS projection for 2030. And it's a big if they hit that target. And if the stock keeps trading at the current kind of tech-heavy NASDAQ 100 multiple, which is around 28.5 times forward earnings,
Then the stock price could theoretically hit.
could theoretically reach around 599 a share, which, based on current levels, would be something like 116% upside.
Wow. So that tells you just how much belief in flawless execution is already baked into the current stock price.
It does. Which leads to the final provocative thought for you, the listener. It's really about a financial trade-off. Does Oracle's 800+ billion in contracted RPO, the money they're essentially guaranteed to get, outweigh the roughly $21 billion in cash they have to spend every single year just to build the infrastructure to deliver it?
That's the crux of it. That massive investment needed to turn the contract into actual profit. That's the tension, the risk-reward balance that will really define Oracle's story over the rest of this decade.
That's the question to mull over. Hashtag tag outro.
And that brings us to the end of this deep dive into Oracle. Cloud Titan, potential AI kingmaker, or maybe something in between.
But a lot hinges on the execution.
It really does. We've covered the transformation of their business, the huge opportunity driven by this AI infrastructure demand, and, crucially, the complex web of risks involved in turning that massive $800 billion backlog into sustainable profit.
Hopefully a balanced view.
That was the goal. We hope this gave you a clear, balanced shortcut to understanding the huge moves being made by this really transformed tech giant, focusing on the core business, the market outlook, and that essential comparison of the strengths versus the very real risks. Now, we always like to ask, if you have a company you want to know more about, maybe one you're tracking or just curious about, definitely leave us a comment. Let us know what information or sources you'd like us to unpack next time.
Yeah, we're always looking for the next deep dive subject.
Absolutely. We love digging into this stuff for you. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll talk to you next time.